Hi everyone, this is Tyler from Craft and Tailored, and in this episode of Under the Radar, I am talking about a 1975 Seiko chronograph, reference 6139-6005, otherwise known as the Seiko Pogue or the Chronograph Pogue. These Seiko chronographs just have such a cool history to them, from the backstory of the movement to how they got their nickname. So Cam just did a video on the Zenith El Primero, and this Seiko has a very similar lineage to that, as this Seiko 6139 movement, the Zenith El Primero movement, and the Heuer, Bruin, Hamilton, Caliber 11 movement all sort of came out at the same time, and they were sort of in this race for the first automatic chronograph to ever be produced. Some say it's Seiko, some people say it's Zenith. It really comes down to who produced the movement first and then who released the movement first. They all sort of came out in 1969, and so the Seiko 6139 movement was one of the very first automatic chronographs to ever be produced. So the reference 6139 got its nickname from Colonel Pogue, who in 1973 actually wore his own personal 6139-6002 during the NASA Skylab 4 mission, subsequently making Seiko the first automatic chronograph to be used in space. Pogue purchased the Seiko chronograph from a PX for $71 in 1972 to use during his flight training, as NASA astronauts were not issued their Omega Speedmasters until closer to the launch dates. Due to Pogue's familiarity with the Seiko chronograph over the Omega Speedmaster, he hid his personal 6139-6002 in his flight suit before launching into space, so that he could use the Seiko in conjunction with his Omega Speedmaster for the duration of the Skylab 4 mission, which is just kind of like such a badass story and so cool and very rock and roll of this NASA astronaut. Apart from it being such a cool automatic chronograph, one of the first, having NASA sort of provenance to it, the marketing for this chronograph was just so ridiculous by Seiko, and I feel like so marketed towards like the Americana at the time. I actually have one of the original ads that was used, and they called it like the man's watch. It just has the most ridiculous dialogue. The sun sets, she sighs, and you whisper, "You want to see my Seiko chronograph?" And she gets jealous, because it's the kind of watch you never take off for anything. Built by the world's largest maker of jewel lever watches, Seiko. Make her jealous. Wear the man's watch, the Seiko chronograph. You'll love every minute of it. It's just like the most cheesy, ridiculous ad that I think I've ever seen for a wristwatch, but just so cool that it's tied into like this NASA and this horological history. So primarily it's the yellow dial 6139s with the yellow rotating rings that have 70 meters resist on the dial that are considered like true Pogues. However, I feel it's pretty safe to call even like the blue dials or the non-70 meter resist dials Pogues as well, just because they all kind of fit within that 6139 category. With all of like sort of like the history and nuance behind the watch behind us, I feel like the watch itself is just so cool. Really like its wrist presence. I'm currently wearing it on a NATO strap, and it kind of just fits that tool watch Seiko vibe. I really like that sort of blue and red tachometer outer bezel, and it kind of gives me like sort of that Pepsi vibe. I really like the metallic gold dial. It's very robust. It really just kind of jumps out at you. Isn't too loud, but it is definitely very noticeable. I like how on a lot of these, the inner rotating timing ring has faded to this sort of like creamy coloration that kind of adds a little bit of contrast from the dial to the outer bezel. And I just really love the simplicity of the design. It doesn't have a running seconds hand. It has a single chronograph hand and a 30-minute counter at the 6 o'clock. And you just sort of hit the top pusher and it just starts running, and you can stop and reset. And it just kind of does exactly what it's supposed to. You get your hour and your minutes. But one thing that I think is really impressive about these watches is it has a day-date function, so it tells you the day and the date. and it's quickset as well. And for them to design this automatic chronograph with a quickset day and date function when all of the other brands were just focusing purely on a chronograph that could record time that was also automatic, I think kind of just layers on top of layers of Seiko ingenuity, and I think they're just super cool watches. They're not like super under the radar. A lot of people in the collecting world know what Pogues are. And they're definitely moving up in value. However, this one is more for those collectors out there that are just getting into collecting, maybe just getting into Seikos because of their quality, their cool factor, and also their price point. But I remember seeing Pogues being sold like 3 years ago, back in like 2018 for like $400, and now they're passing the $1,000 mark. And if there's any sort of similarity to like the other Seikos that we're seeing climb in value, like the 6105, the Captain Willards, or the 62 Mosses, there is a lot of room for these watches to grow value-wise. But one of the reasons why I think they're so under the radar is because they are still in that sub-$1,000, just $1,000 price range. And there's so much watch there, there's so much nuance, there's so much cool factor to these pieces that you can still snag and just have a very cool, very wearable and interesting and historically significant watch without being totally crazy out of the box expensive. And I mean, I see these watches reaching $2,000 within the next couple of years as more awareness and as more collectors sort of step into the realm of vintage Seiko. So maybe not the most under the radar piece, but I think under the radar price point wise, just a really cool watch and a cool story I wanted to share with you. So with that, I want to say thank you for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Follow us on Instagram at CraftedTailored. And if you have watch questions, we are here to help. You can drop us a line at info@craftedtailored.com. See you in the next one.